This is Julia James Davis, and welcome to The War on Beauty. Why is nothing cool anymore? Why is all fashion, art, movies, music all so boring despite being more outrageous than ever? It's actually because of the death of cultural hegemony. There's no longer any boundaries or taboos in our society, and you need boundaries in order to break boundaries, in order to be a boundary breaker. Instead now, the fringes of our society have taken over and the most bizarre things are normalized, and we have to respect everyone's weird behaviors as their truth. Radical inclusivity and individualism has destroyed counterculture because the vibrancy and health of countercultural movements is in direct proportion to the rigidity of the dominant culture. You need a culture in order to be countercultural. And this counterculture in modern times is where the great art and music comes from. Think of Romanticism to Pink Floyd to Alexander McQueen. But now, fringe and radical expressions or movements have not only been normalized, but have actually been fully integrated into the mainstream. Feminism, transgenderism, mental illness, and basically anything seen as different. And because of this, the fringe youth are just asocial and generally sickly rather than being boundary breakers or even cool, which is what the youth in society is supposed to be. The once peace-loving progressives have now become the biggest champions for interventionism, war, and present-day colonialism. Feminism has become patriarchal and DEI has become racist. You'll see a once great fashion magazine applauding a man in a ball gown, while in the next article you'll see them tearing down a feminine trad wife. In the past 10 years, ironically, conservatism is what has become the subculture. It is the one social taboo that could get your life completely canceled. In fact, it feels a lot more risky and bold to be religious, nationalist, pro-American, and heterosexual than it does to be a they-them. But before we get too far down that road, let's compare our situation to Japan, a country that has one of the most vibrant and interesting countercultural movements anywhere. Japan, especially Tokyo, has incredible subcultural movements, especially in fashion, because unlike the US, there is still a dominant mainstream culture based on hierarchy and on valuing the collective over the individual. In Japan, there's a laid out expectation for everybody's life, which is to go to school and then to go work in a company to have a career. And this has created the stereotype of the Japanese salaryman who embodies the corporate work culture there. Honor, discipline, and hard work and achievement are the dominant values of Japanese society. It's a much harder culture, more strict. You can't just stay immature and never grow up. You have to become a productive member of society, and if you shirk that responsibility, that's what's taboo. This has led to a phenomenon in Japan called karoshi, which means death or disability caused by overwork or stress from your job. There's this mentality that it's bad to take off any days from work at all, and it's just so interesting because compare that to the US, where people are calling in sick from work to go to a Taylor Swift concert, or people are taking just random mental health days to relax. Another example of this strong homogeneity in Japan is the fact that the country is 97.8% Japanese, and 99.2% of people in Japan have Japanese as their first language. Compare that to the US, where just 78.4% of the population speaks English as their first language, and 21.6% of US households speak languages other than English. And it's predicted that by 2044, the US could become a majority-minority nation, meaning that no one racial or ethnic group will make up any majority. But it's precisely these monocultural conditions in Japan that have created the brilliant alternative youth fashions, specifically Kawaii Style, which is my favorite. Kawaii basically means cute and girlish, and it has many different expressions. For example, the Lolita style or decora. According to a paper, the Lolita aesthetic is a subculture where women and men are empowered by the Lolita aesthetic to present themselves anachronistically in order to escape the trappings of adult life, and with it, the culture's dominant ideologies. So contrasting the sharp, plain, professional, corporate attire of the dominant culture, the Harajuku girls, which is the neighborhood where all these youths come to express their style, they wear tons of accessories of vibrant or pastel colors, and a lot of the times the clothes make them look like children. Through fashion, these kawaii girls are rejecting the cultural expectations that you need to grow up and get a job, and just within that one subculture of kawaii, there's endless subcultures that are exploring different taboos within the society, such as yami kawaii, which explores the taboo of mental illness. But if you took away that dominant collective culture of Japan with the focus on duty and honor and work, I really don't think that you would get this level of style and self-expression. There wouldn't be a need for it. And so shifting back to the US, we really don't have any cultural hegemony anymore. We don't have any norms or a dominant culture. And it's really because of this new emphasis on the individual. There's this anti-assimilation idea in the US that can really be perfectly summed up in this phrase, diversity is our strength. That goes beyond any specific immigrant group, any specific cultural expression like language or what food you're cooking at home, but actually is applied to the entire American society. We are all, no matter who you are, if you're an immigrant or you're a waspy white girl, everyone is urged to live out their weirdest individual inclinations, which is then protected and celebrated. This has created an environment where there's no more social stigmas anymore, no taboos. The only thing that you can't do anymore is have boundaries in this boundaryless society. For example, being religious or believing in the biological basis of gender are major no-nos. In fact, a new report from the Judiciary House Committee released December 4th, 2023, detailed the FBI's targeting of radical traditional Catholics as violent extremists and proposed opportunities for the FBI to infiltrate Catholic churches as a form of threat mitigation. The report goes on to say that the FBI singled out Americans who are pro-life, pro-family, and support the biological basis for sex and gender distinction as potential domestic terrorists. That is so insane. This is like one of the only things that's not allowed anymore, and I immediately thought of the hippie movement as another kind of countercultural movement that was under suspicion by the government. I guess like the traditional Catholics are the new hippies, which is so funny. Interestingly, it's in the breaking down of any hegemonic culture in the US that all of the fringe underbelly movements have risen up to become the new dominant culture, sponsored by the patriarchal institutions of our society. Big pharma, big tech, corporations, and the government. While tradition, art, and beauty have all been shoved into the underground to the point where Latin mass goers are now labeled as a domestic threat. So we really do, in the end, have a new cultural hegemony based on individualism, multiculturalism, and diversity. And so again, I really do think it is so fascinating that the new counterculture is basically being a normal, square person. And I think you can start to see this in kind of the rise of people like Oliver Anthony and his viral song, Rich Men of North Richmond. It's these normal all-American people that are going to be creators of the new artistic movements. I'm not sure that we have ever had a counterculture led by religious, pro-America, blue-collar youth, but I really think that's what's happening here, and I would love to know your thoughts on this. Do you see this happening? Do you think that we have any healthy youth or countercultural movements in America? I would love to know, and thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video.